So I just watched the first season of Invincible and I thought it was pretty good. Going into this, I honestly didn't know what to expect from this show. From the very beginning, I thought it was going to be a cute superhero cartoon about a kid going through the regular motions of high school while juggling being a superhero and striving to measure up to his superhero father. But by the end of the first episode, it became abundantly clear that this was not going to be a cute kid show. The final scene of Omni-Man massacring the Guardians of the Globe was genuinely unsettling to watch. Like, I was actually uncomfortable with how graphic, gory, and violent it suddenly got. I'm just glad this show was animated because otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to sit through that if it were live action. From there, it sets the main storyline for the rest of the season, with the characters and the audience trying to figure out why Omni-Man murdered the Justice League. However, I say main storyline because this is where my main criticism of the show comes in. I think this show is spread a little too thin. It has just a few too many subplots for my personal liking. Now, some of them are actually good, like the romantic storyline between Mark and Amber, with Mark trying to juggle his superhero lifestyle and being a good boyfriend to Amber. But I also felt like there were some storylines that didn't really contribute a whole lot to the series. The Mars storyline, where Mark goes into space to shadow a mission to Mars and ends up fucking Mars up before leaving, really stands out to me as just being a really weird story. Like, I feel like somebody just took a list of ideas and inserted a Mars storyline in the middle of an episode and just decided to call it. And it wouldn't be so bad if these stories actually led somewhere, but they don't. The Emperor of the Martians mentions how if the Saquids on Mars controlled a human, they would completely take over Mars. And right after Mark screws the Martians over by trying to escape with the astronauts, and one of the Saquids manages to get a hold of one of the astronauts, the storyline is just completely dropped, and it's not brought up again at all until the very end. The Titan/Machine Head storyline also doesn't really have a resolution. After it's revealed that Titan just used Mark to take Machine Head's place, his storyline is also not brought up again until the very end. Some storylines are just introduced and dropped immediately afterwards, like this mummy scene where this guy awakens and unearths an ancient power, and I don't think it comes up again at all for the rest of the season. Like, that one was probably the most confusing one for me. By the end of the season, I thought, what the hell happened to that mummy storyline? Are we just not going to address it? This was probably my biggest criticism of the series, is that so many different subplots and stories, with a lot of them not being resolved or even addressed at all by the end of the season, really makes the series as a whole feel a lot more disjointed and messy. I think if this series focused singularly on the main storyline, that being the mystery of why Omni-Man killed the Guardians, and Mark becoming a superhero while trying to balance everyday life, the whole season could have been so much tighter. Stop focusing on all this other stuff that doesn't really matter. Now, I think it's time I talk about the animation, because it's a bit weird. In some places, I think it looks good. The scene of Mark arriving at Mars actually looks really nice, particularly Mars itself, which looks very realistic for an animation. There are also some other points, like in the middle of the final battle between Omni-Man and Invincible, where these people running away look very human. Like, it really looks like what real people would look like if they were running away. However, there are also some parts that look pretty bad, like comedically bad, even for a cartoon. But I feel like all the things that I criticized are relative anyways, because with at least 2 more seasons coming up, they'll have time to make the story not as scattered and improve the animation. Now, as far as characters go, I think they're fleshed out pretty well. You really get to see what each character's motivations, personalities, and stories are. And I think part of the reason why the characters are so good is because of the voice actors. This show has an absolutely star-studded cast with Steven Yeun and Sandra Oh and JJ fucking Jameson. This cast is just so talented. And the other reason why these characters are so good makes me a total hypocrite, but I think they're such fleshed out characters because of those subplots that I said I didn't like. And yeah, at the end of the day, I think less subplots would lead to the story being a lot less cluttered, but I can't argue that they help us dive into what makes each character tick. And when it comes to the main character, Mark, I have to say that I don't think I've seen a hero this incompetent in a really long time. Like, the name Invincible is actually kind of ironic because he gets dominated in almost every single fight scene. I would have liked to see Mark actually be a more competent superhero, but that's just my personal preference, and it didn't really affect my overall enjoyment of the show. And that's the thing, despite any problems I might have had with the first season with the subplots and the animation and some of the characters, it still made for a good show. This first season was a good launching point to set a sort of baseline for the rest of the series, and I'm excited to see some of these things expanded further in the future. But for now, I'm going to give Invincible Season 1 an 8 out of 10.